My name is Eleanor. I am 58 years old, and for the last 35 of them I have been a mother. That was my main role, my career, my religion. I turned down a scholarship to a prestigious design school to marry Richard, the love of my life. I created our home from 4 walls and an empty lot, turning it into a work of art, an oasis where our children, Michael and Jessica, grew up. I was the kind of mother who baked cookies for school fairs, sewed Halloween costumes until 3 a.m, and knew the names of all my children's teddy bears. I was the foundation on which my husband built his business empire, and my children built their successful lives. And today my son Michael is getting married. The wedding is at the Gilded Spoon, the most expensive restaurant in the city. The very same one my late husband Richard opened 10 years ago as the pinnacle of his success. I know every corner of it because I personally chose the upholstery for the chairs and the crystal for the chandeliers. I should be there in the front row, in a lavender dress I had mentally picked out, clutching a handkerchief and wiping away tears of joy. But I'm not there. I'm sitting in my car, parked across the street, watching as limousines pull up and elegantly dressed guests hurry under a white tent to escape the drizzling rain. I was not invited. My own children, my flesh and blood, have cut me out of their lives as easily as you cross an unnecessary item off a to-do list. They didn't even bother to tell me in person. I found out about the wedding from the society section of the city newspaper, where a photo of my smiling son and his fiancée, Chloe, shone under the headline, "A merger of 2 dynasties." My dynasty, the one I built on sleepless nights and endless love, apparently no longer mattered. It all started 2 years ago, after Richard's death. His passing left a galaxy-sized hole in my soul, but I thought I had my children. I was wrong. My husband's death was not a reason to come together, but a trigger to pull us apart. First it was small things. "Mom, maybe you shouldn't call so often. Chloe and I are busy." "Mom, this house is too big for you alone, we're thinking of selling it." "Mom, your views are a little outdated." Chloe. She came into Michael's life like a hurricane, sweeping away everything in her path. Ambitious, calculating, with the smile of a shark and eyes of cold jade. She came from new money, and saw me as nothing more than an annoying attachment to the fortune she intended to make her own. Jessica, my daughter, who had always been jealous of her brother's success, quickly fell under Chloe's influence. Together, they formed an unbreakable alliance aimed at my removal. Our last conversation took place 6 months ago, in the living room of my home. The same one where I had rocked them in my arms. "Mom, we have to be practical," Michael began, avoiding my gaze and fidgeting with an expensive cufflink. "Maintaining this house is crazy. The property taxes are enormous. Chloe and I found you a lovely apartment in a luxury retirement community. It has everything: medical care, hobby clubs." "Hobby clubs?" My voice trembled. "Michael, this is my home. Your father died here. Every object here holds a memory of him, of us." "Exactly," Jessica interjected, her tone icy. She sat with one leg crossed over the other, her face a mask of contempt. "Memories. The past. We live in the present. Chloe is right, you're clinging to something that's long gone. You've become a burden, Mom. Your constant sadness, your stories about the past. It's exhausting." Burden. The word hit me like a slap. It rang in my ears, burning everything inside. I looked at my son, searching for support, but he just gave a guilty shrug. "Jess, don't be so harsh." "But Mom, she has a point. It's time to move on." That day I knew I had lost. They put my house up for sale. They restricted my access to the family accounts, granting me a decent allowance to live on like a little old widow. They took everything that made up my life. My home, my dignity, my family. They left me in an empty void, alone with ghosts and a feeling of total betrayal. I moved into a small, rented apartment on the edge of town and sank into a gray, featureless existence. I stopped painting. I stopped leaving the house. I just waited for the pain to end. But it didn't end. It grew, transforming into a cold, crystal-clear rage. And then 10 days ago the phone rang. It was my father's lawyer. My father, Arthur, had passed away 5 years ago. He was a quiet, wise man, a former judge, and had always disliked Richard, finding him too ambitious and shallow. And as it turned out, he had absolutely no trust in his grandchildren. "Eleanor," the lawyer said in his gravelly voice, "it is time to open the last envelope your father left. According to his will, I was to give it to you either 5 years after his death, or in the event you found yourself in extreme life circumstances. Your move and the sale of your house, initiated by your children, certainly qualify." The next day, I sat in his dusty office, which smelled of old paper and leather. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside were documents. They were complex, full of legal terms, but their meaning was simple and devastating. My father, that insightful old man, had seen it all coming. He had created a complex system of trusts and invested a significant part of the fortune I inherited from him, as well as his own savings. Richard, my husband, managed these assets, but he did not own them. He grew them, but the main share had always belonged to me through my father's trust. Furthermore, my father had been the primary investor in the purchase of the building for the Gilded Spoon restaurant and in the construction of our home. All these years, I had been the majority shareholder and the true owner without even knowing it. Everything was handled through a power of attorney that passed from my father to Richard, and after his death, it was supposed to pass to me. But my children, taking advantage of my grief and legal ignorance, simply hid these documents, managing everything as if they were the sole heirs. But the biggest shock was something else. My father had left a document that gave me absolute, irrevocable power over all assets related to his investments. And that power came into effect right now. The lawyer looked at me over his glasses. "Your father wrote that money corrupts people who have no heart. He feared that one day you might be left with nothing. Eleanor, according to the law, all of this is yours. The house, the controlling stake in the restaurant, the main family accounts that were funded by the trust. Everything." I sat in silence as the world around me began to change. The rage that had been smoldering inside me for months erupted into a blinding flame. It wasn't just rage. It was anticipation. The anticipation of justice. The next 9 days were a blur of activity. I didn't sleep, fueled by coffee and adrenaline. The lawyer and I worked like a well-oiled machine. We gathered all the I became the legal owner of the house they had almost sold. I became the sole owner of all the bank accounts, leaving just enough in Michael's joint account to match the allowance they had given me. And the cherry on top, I became the outright owner of the Gilded Spoon restaurant. The restaurant manager, a man named James whom I remembered as a young waiter, turned pale when I showed him the documents. "Eleanor, I don't understand." "It's very simple, James," I said in a calm, steady voice that surprised even me. "There has been a small change in management. My son's wedding will proceed as planned. Follow all their instructions and don't say a word. But from this moment on, you work for me. And tonight at 9 o'clock, you will do exactly as I say." And so here I am, sitting in my car looking at the clock. 8:45 p.m. The guests are all here. The music is playing. The champagne is flowing. My children are celebrating the start of their new life, built on my humiliation. They think they've won. They think they've gotten rid of the burden. I adjust my dress. It's not lavender. It's black like a velvet southern night. Elegant, severe, custom-made by the best tailor. Around my neck is a string of pearls, a gift from my father. I get out of the car. The rain has stopped. The air is fresh and smells of ozone and revenge. I don't use the main entrance. I go to the service door where James is already waiting for me. His hands are trembling slightly. "Everything is ready, Eleanor. The electrician is waiting for your signal." "Thank you, James. You won't regret this." He leads me to a small office with security monitors. On one of them I see the main hall. It's magnificent. Flowers, candles, laughing faces. There is Michael, my handsome son, raising a glass. Beside him, Chloe is radiant in a dress that costs as much as my yearly pension. There is Jessica, animatedly talking to some guests. They are happy. Their world is perfect. I look at the clock. 8:59 p.m. The host for the evening, a well-known local entertainer, steps onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? I'd like to give the floor to the father of the bride, who would like to make a toast to the happy couple. Chloe's father, a smug-looking man with a ruddy face, rises from his seat. I would like to say, this is my moment. I take out my phone and send a short text to the electrician. Now. The very instant the man opened his mouth to begin his speech, the entire hall plunged into absolute, impenetrable darkness. The music cut off mid-note. The laughter died. A frightened gasp swept through the room, followed by a ringing, tense silence. The only light came from the emergency lamps over the exits, casting ominous green shadows on the walls. The guests froze. Someone turned on a phone flashlight, catching confused faces in its beam. In that thick, almost tangible silence there was a sound. Sharp, rhythmic, relentless. Blick, blick, blick. It was the sound of my heels on the parquet floor. I walked from the darkness of the hallway toward the stage. A beam of light from someone's phone caught my face, and a surprised whisper rippled through the hall. I saw them, the frozen figures at the tables, the white blur of Chloe's dress, the petrified face of Michael. He recognized me. Course he did. I stepped onto the stage and walked to the microphone. I didn't need light. I knew this place by heart. Good evening. My voice, amplified by a miraculously working microphone, sounded loud and clear, cutting through the silence. Don't worry. This isn't a technical problem. This is, let's say, a change in the program. I paused, letting them absorb my voice. Many of you know me. For those who don't, I'll introduce myself. My name is Eleanor. I am the groom's mother. Another wave of whispers. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, full of confusion and curiosity. I imagine you're surprised to see me here. My children, Michael and Jessica, went to great lengths to make sure that didn't happen. They decided my place was in the past, that I was a burden, that my home, which I spent 30 years building, was better off sold, and that I should be sent to a retirement home. They felt they had the right to control my life and my husband's legacy as they saw fit. I spoke calmly, without a tremor in my voice. Every word was sharpened like a guillotine blade. They were in such a hurry to start their new, shiny lives that they forgot one small detail. They forgot to read the documents carefully. You see, my husband was a talented businessman, but the main investor and owner of everything you see around you was always my father. And after him, me. A dead silence fell over the room. I saw Michael slowly rise from his seat. His face was as white as a sheet. Mom, what are you talking about? His voice was barely audible. I'm telling the truth, my son. Something you and your sister never learned to do. This restaurant, where you are celebrating your wedding, has belonged to me since last week. The house you so kindly put up for sale also belongs to me. And all the family accounts you so generously used to pay for this. I gestured around the hall. Banquet are also under my full and sole control. There was a short, hysterical cry. 'Twas Chloe. You're lying. That's impossible. My dear, my voice dripped with icy calm. Lying is your family's trade, not mine. All the documents are in perfect order. You can check. Although, I'm afraid you might be a little too busy for that right now. I turned back to the hall, to the stunned guests who were witnessing the greatest theatrical performance of their lives. I didn't come here to ruin a party. I came here to end it. Because this party was paid for with money stolen from me by my children. They built their happiness on the betrayal of their own mother. They threw me out like an old piece of furniture, deciding I no longer fit into their glossy world. I took a step forward to the very edge of the stage. Michael, Jessica, you wanted a family without me. Well, congratulations. Your wish has been granted. As of this moment, you no longer have a home or money or a business. You only have each other. And your practicality. I hope it's enough to pay the bills for the flowers and the tuxedo rentals. The lights flashed back on as suddenly as they had gone out. Bright, merciless light flooded the hall, revealing a scene of apocalypse. Chloe was sobbing into Michael's shoulder. Michael stood staring at me, his eyes full of horror and hatred. Jessica was deathly pale, her mouth open in a silent scream. The guests, recovering, began to whisper feverishly, some pulling out their phones to record the finale of this drama. And now, my voice rang out like a gong, I will ask everyone to leave my restaurant. The banquet is over. Security will escort you to the exit. As for the newlyweds, you have 24 hours to collect your belongings from my house. After that, I'm changing the locks. I turned and walked off the stage without looking back. I didn't look at their faces. I didn't want to see their despair. I felt only emptiness and a cold, heavy satisfaction. It wasn't joy. It was the restoration of balance. Justice, as ugly as it was. I walked outside. The night air was cool. I took a deep breath. I didn't know what would happen next. I was alone. My children, whatever they had become, now hated me. I had destroyed their lives just as they had tried to destroy mine. But as I walked to my car under the bright stars, for the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel pain or rage. Felt freedom. I hadn't just won back a house and money. I had won back myself. Eleanor. A woman who once knew how to paint. A woman who survived betrayal and stood tall. The price of betrayal was high. But the price of my own dignity, I realized that night, was priceless. My revenge did not bring me happiness, but it brought me peace. And that was more than enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left, and thank you for watching.